Hi, my name is Jeff Alhadeff. This is the final unit in the user authentication module. Set up single sign-on for your internal users. You're welcome to follow me as I work my way through this unit. If I come across anything that seemed a little bit tricky to me, I'll link to it in the description below under tips. I'll also link to my solution for the hands-on challenge. I won't show exactly how I solved it because I want you to earn the badge. But otherwise, you're welcome to follow. And with that, let's get started.
Okay, so hopefully that intro wasn't totally cringy. Set up single sign-on for your internal users, objectives. After completing this module, you'll be able to create a Federation ID, which definitely sounds Star Trekky or Star whatever. Set up a single sign-on from an external identity provider. Become familiar with the tools to troubleshoot SAML, I don't know how to pronounce that. Requests. Single sign-on. With a custom domain and login page, you make it easy for employees to log into your Salesforce org with a secure, easy-to-remember URL. Do you want to make it easier so they don't have to log in at all? Then set up single sign-on. SSO has a lot of advantages. You spend less time managing passwords. Your employees save time when they don't have to manually log into Salesforce. Did you know that users take 5 to 20 seconds to log into an online application? Those seconds add up. More people use Salesforce. Users can send out links to Salesforce records and reports, and the recipients can open them in a single click. You can manage access to sensitive information from one place. In this unit, we show you how to set up inbound SSO. Users log in somewhere else, like an on-premise app, and then access Salesforce without logging in. What does that mean? Okay, they log in someplace else. Not like at the coffee shop, but like in some other app. You can also set up outbound SSO in which users log into Salesforce and then other services without logging in again. We'll save that topic for another module. Configure inbound SSO with a third-party identity provider. Let's start configuring inbound SSO with a third-party identity provider. The head of your IT department, Sean Solo, tells you to set up Salesforce users with SSO so that they can log in to your Salesforce org with their Jedi Network credentials. Here, we walk you through the steps to set up SSO for Jedi Tech's new employee, CO3PO. You set up inbound SSO using the Axiom Heroku web app and identity provider. Is this starting to sound difficult? It's not really. Let's break into simple steps. Create a Federation ID for each user. Set up SSO as settings in Salesforce. Set up Salesforce settings in the SSO provider. Make sure it all works. Remember what prerequisite is for SSO? That's right, a custom domain. Because you've already completed the unit to set up your custom domain, you're ready to go. Okay, do I still have that? Yeah, okay, I do. I created some of my extra orgs earlier today, so it's a good thing I did delete that one. Okay. When setting up SSO, you use a unique attribute to identify each user. This attribute is the link that associates the Salesforce user with the external identity provider. You can use a username, user ID, or Federation ID. We're going to use a Federation ID. No, a Federation ID isn't owned by an interstellar shipping organization with nefarious designs. It's basically a term that the identity industry uses to refer to a unique user ID. Okay, so this is an industry term. That's a unique user ID. Typically, you assign a federation ID when setting up a user account. Is there any other type of account? API account, maybe? When you set up your SSO in your production environment, you can assign the federation ID for many users at once with tools like Salesforce Data Loader. For now, let's set up an account for Jedi Tech's new employee, SIA 3PO. From setup, enter users in the quick find box, then select users. Click edit next to SIA's name. Did I do this? I hope this is the domain I did this in. I didn't create this user yet in this org. Under the Federation ID, SIA, add Jedi Tech. Was that supposed to be the ID? For each user in the org. There it is. Okay, so single sign-on information, Federation ID, SIA at jeditech.com. Click Save. The Federation ID must be unique for each user in an org. That's why the username is handy. But if the user belongs to multiple orgs, use the same Federation ID for the user in each org. Oh. That's why I'm able to sign in and out of like different Salesforce orgs when I'm working, because I guess I have the same Federation ID in each of them. Click Save. Set up SSO provider in Salesforce. Your service provider needs to know about your identity provider and vice versa. Service provider, identity provider. What is the service provider? Receives and accepts authentication assertions in conjunction with a single sign-on profile. That's a service provider, and the identity provider is a system entity that uses authentication assertions. So you have one that provides the service and one that provides the identity. Doesn't really make sense to me. On the service side, we configure SAML settings. SAML is the protocol that Salesforce Identity uses to implement SSO. Gosh, that's confusing. Tip, you're going to work in both your Salesforce Dev org and the Axiom app. Keep them open in a separate browser window so you can copy and paste between the two. You got it. A new browser. Okay, click SAML Identity Provider and Tester. Click download the identity provider certificate. You upload the certificate later to your Salesforce org, so remember where you save it. Okay, there's that cert. That just went to my downloads. In your Salesforce org, from setup, enter single in the quick find box and select single sign-on settings. Click edit, select SAML enable, click save. In SAML sign-on settings, click new, enter the following values. Name. Axiom test app. Issuer. HTTP. No S. I think they should fix that. Identity provider certificate. Choose the file you download in step 3. Downloads. Request signature method. Select RSA SHA1. Of course, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, gotta switch that. Don't want that other one at all. I have no idea. SAML identity type. Select assertion contains the federation ID. SAML identity type. Assertion contains federation ID from the user object. Self-signed. SAML identity type. Select SAML identity. Assertion contains the federation ID from the user object. Right. Assertion contains the user federation ID or user ID. Assertion contains the federation ID from the user object. Assertion contains the federation ID from the user object. Okay. SAML identity location. Select identity as the name identifier element in the subject statement. Identity is the name identifier element in the subject statement. That's right. Service provider initiated request binding. Select HTTP redirect. Right, of course. We don't want HTTP post. Again, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just literally following instructions. Identity ID. Enter your domain name, including HTTPS. Use the subdomain that you set up in the customize your login process with my domain unit. Copy and paste it from the browser address bar. Need a space there. Before you click save, confirm the setting page looks something like. Okay, I gotta enter the identity ID. There it is. Got it. And click save and leave the browser page open. Okay. Link your identity provider to Salesforce. Now that you've configured Salesforce to know about the identity provider, Axiom, you teach your identity provider about your service provider, Salesforce. Still not really clear on this. You fill in a few fields in the following Axiom form. Easy peasy, because you're supplying Salesforce SSO settings. Keep 2 browser windows open, one for Salesforce and one for Axiom. We're good. Return to the Axiom web app if you don't have the app open, browser open. You didn't follow the instructions, bucko. Go to, okay, click SAML Identity Provider and Tester. SAML Identity Provider and Tester. Click SAML Identity Provider and Tester. Click Generate.
I left a coffee mug in your car.
Okay. Click generate a SAML response. Click generate a SAML response. Click SAML identity provider and tester. I did, but it didn't do anything. Click generate a SAML response. Okay. Huh. Okay, enter the following values. Leave the other fields as is. SAML version 2.0, of course. Username or federated ID, Sia at Jedi Tech. Sia Jedi Tech. Issuer is this HTTP. Issuer. Recipient URL. Get the URL from the Salesforce SAML single sign-on settings page. Don't see it. It's the bottom labeled Salesforce login URL. Recipient URL. Get the URL from the Salesforce SAML sign-on setting page. Don't see it. It's at the bottom labeled Salesforce login URL. Recipient URL. Okay, don't see it. It's at the bottom. Recipient URL. Get the URL from the Salesforce SAML sign-on settings page. Don't see it. Get the URL from the Salesforce SAML single sign-on settings page. Don't see it. It's at the bottom. Get the URL. Recipient. Salesforce SAML sign-on. Salesforce SAML. Is the identity ID? No. The login URL? Get the URL from the Salesforce SAML sign-on settings page. Salesforce Salesforce SAML settings. Don't see it. It's at the bottom. Is that this endpoint thing? OAuth 2.0 token endpoint. Well, we are using 2.0. Let's go with that. This guy. The bottom. Hopefully you can see it. Identity, the identity from the Salesforce entity. There you go. That's this guy. Okay, fine. Oh, it's a login URL. Recipient URL. They have here pick the picture of the login URL. Maybe let's use the login URL. So this is confusing because they're the log in and also the log out. This looks different than that. I'm gonna take this login URL that they have down there and try using that for the recipient URL. Make sure it all works. Okay, now that everything's configured, let's make sure it works. What's the proof of successful login, of course? In SAML Settings browser, click Request a SAML response. Axiom generates the SAML assertion in XML. Does it look like a language used by a robot communicating with the desert outpost moisture evaporators? Look again. You can see that it doesn't look all that bad. To get the interesting information, scroll through the XML. Looks like it worked. So we have that. Click login. Wow, that's pretty cool. If everything is okay, you're logged in as Sia at your Salesforce homepage. Yeah, I am. I think I was just persisting that previous name. The Axiom application logs you into your Salesforce org as the user with the assigned Federation ID. Congratulations, you just configured Salesforce SSO for your users who are accessing Salesforce from another app. Take your place at the top of the stage and receive your badge. Follow steps 1 through 4 outlined in this module to set up a single sign-on. Use the Axiom Heroku web app as the identity provider and SSO and log in. So basically, if you just do what you just were supposed to have done, then it should work. It's pretty cool. I will tell the world about it. The one thing that I think was tricky here is when it says the recipient URL, it's at the bottom of the page. The one that you're supposed to take from is the login URL, not the OAuth 2.0 token endpoint. But otherwise, this unit was actually really straightforward. Okay, thanks for watching.